Okay, hi everyone. Thanks, Nikki, for introducing me, and thanks to CRELLA for inviting me to present my PhD research findings at this highly prestigious and well-reputed seminar. I'm really pleased to present my research findings today. So before I talk about what I'm going to present, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Muhammad Tanveer, as Dr. Nikki has just introduced me. Oh my God, what's happening? I'm sorry again.
Really, don't worry. It's never going to be word perfect. And if you were presenting on the day, it wouldn't be word perfect. And in a way, if it is word perfect, it becomes a little bit artificial. You know, it won't sound like a real.
Yeah, so I presented in real, but recording is first time. That's why I felt like maybe it has to be.
It makes you feel. Don't worry.
Okay, because I'm fasting also, so I need to make
God,
sure I'm.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, so inshallah this will
we'll do this one. If you're not happy with it, that's absolutely fine. On Wednesday, when you'll no longer be fasting, you can present live. So let's
try
and do the recording and see how it is. And if it's not good, you know, if you're not completely satisfied with it, that's fine. You can present live on Wednesday. Okay.
I will present live. Also, I have sent you the recording. Maybe you see that's better than this. So,
yeah.
So you'll see you have two options. So you'll be fine.
No pressure.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Hi everyone. Thanks, Nikki, for introducing me, and thanks to CRELLA for inviting me to present my PhD research project at this well-reputed and prestigious seminar. I'm really pleased to present my research findings today. So before I talk about my project, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a senior English language lecturer at Bajan University College, which is affiliated with University of Bedfordshire. I have recently completed my data collections and I'm currently analyzing my data. So I would be welcoming your critical comments and your valuable feedback to proceed further with my project. So the project I'm working on is developing speaking test tasks that elicit the construct of English language proficiency for employability. So what I'm going to do in the next 20 minutes, I'll be presenting, I'll be just giving you a brief overview of the background of my study, the local Omani context. And I'll be talking about the rationale of conducting such a study in my context. I'll be sharing my research questions and part of research methods. Why I'm saying part of research methods, because I think the part I'm going to share in my presentation today could be more interesting for the audience. So I'll be also sharing my preliminary findings and the plan that I'm having to analyze my data at this stage. Right. So let me tell you a little bit more about local Omani context. In Oman, the language in the society is Arabic, but English language is used as a foreign language in the country. Medium of instructions in schools is Arabic up to grade 12 in government schools, but in private schools, the medium of instruction is English. But in higher education, the medium of instruction across the country is English. So you can see there is actually a gap, English language proficiency gap, between school education system and higher education system. So annually, roughly more than 25,000 graduates enter the labor market. The labor market, which is already full of foreign and expatriate workers, approximately more than 1.7 million, workers from different nationalities are working in Oman. So you can see, because the economy of the country depends on expatriate workforce, and because of that, English has really become an important lingua franca for business communication. But what's the problem? The problem is that we do receive a lot of complaints from industry. Employers are not happy with the workforce, Omani workforce, because they lack English language skills, which is required for workplace. Even the findings of my study confirm that the test task that I have designed for my study last month, when this task was used in real life in order to recruit customer service representatives for a call center job, out of 30 candidates, 15 were rejected and 10 were hired, and 5 were put on hold. So you can see the problem really exists in the Omani labor market. The employers are not very happy because of lack of different employability skills, and including English language skills. So what testing options do the employers have in Oman when they have to recruit Omani graduates? So normally they rely on employability skills tests, which are available in the market like VBox, and different commercial English language tests like IELTS, VLADS, and also in-house tests. The problem with these testing options is that these are not fit for purpose and not fit for context, and they're commercial in nature and they're expensive to use as well. So in order to support my rationale, I'm giving 2 different quotations from literature here. The first one is from Young, So, and Okay in 2013, who commented that IELTS and TOEFL test would not necessarily be useful for other purposes, such as screening job candidates in the workplace. That's exactly what I'm trying to do in this study. Similarly, O'Sullivan in 2012 commented that use of IELTS test for purpose other than it is designed for is either amazingly naive, amazingly rash, or amazingly arrogant. So you see, even the literature does not support use of different, commercial tests or different tests out of context. And interestingly, even the Ministry of Education in Oman still requires teachers to have 6.5 bands in IELTS in order to get teaching job. So this is still happening in the real life. So you see, in order to provide an additional assessment tool to the call center industry in Oman, this study has been conducted. So I'm basically planning to provide a speaking test for recruiting customer service representatives, for recruiting actually customer service representatives for the call center industry. Right. So here are some of my research questions. I have 2 research questions. My first research question is, what are the speech functions required to perform the role of a customer service representative to interact with clients over the phone in a call center? So the first research question requires to carry out a detailed needs analysis as guided by various test development and validation frameworks. So the test development and validation framework that I'm using in my study is from Bachman and Palmer's framework. So I will be analyzing, I will be trying to find out what are the speech functions required to play the role of a customer service representative to work in a call center context. And my research question 2 is, do new tasks designed based on a needs analysis elicit speech functions which are more representative of the TLU domain than the current task procedures being used to recruit CSRs in a call center? So my second question is basically that will be based on the new test that I will be designing, that I have designed for my study, and I'll see how my test elicits speech functions which are more representative of the TLU domain. So the current task and procedure used in the call center is just a simple job interview. Moving on to the next slide. In order to answer my research questions, I have used observation checklist approach along with some other data collection procedures such as interviews with the different stakeholders, conducting a personal observation, visiting the call center floor, and also carrying out detailed language related document analysis. But I would like to talk more about observation checklists, because this is something which is very quite relevant to what I'm doing. So originally, this observation checklist was designed for the review project of the University of Cambridge local examination syndicate examinations. O'Sullivan ETAL, while doing this project, designed observation checklists. And what was the main question in their mind? So the question was, when tasks are performed in a test event, how does the test performance relate to the test designer's predictions or expectations based on their definition or interpretation of the test construct? So looking at this quotation, the main purpose of designing the observation checklist is to match the performance of the test taker in a language test with the test designer's prediction or expectation in the first place. If there is no clear match, then there is a problem with the test. So that is what actually I'm trying to do in my study, right? So in order to match this performance on the test task with the test designer's prediction, O'Sullivan ETL categorized the language functions into 3 categories: informational functions, interactional functions, and managing interaction. So informational functions such as providing personal information, non-personal information, interactional functions, something like negotiating meaning, asking for clarification, clarifying, convincing and persuading, and etc. And managing interaction, something like initiating, reciprocity, and terminating. So this was the original purpose of designing observation checklist. What I have done, I have extended the use of observation checklist approach to analyze the target language use domain in order to find out what speech functions are required in order to perform the role of a customer service representative in a call center context. So how this observation checklist approach was used in my study? Basically, I applied observation checklist, the original observation checklist, on 20 calls, the recorded calls from the call center, the real language use in the real life. And soon it was realized that the checklist is not detailed enough to cover a wide range of language functions, speech functions in the call center context. So hence I had to customize it, and I had to use a eclectic approach, and I had to search for other different sources. As you can see on this slide, I have used all these 5 sources to customize the observation checklist. Particularly, I've used Searle's 5 speech framework, which consists of assertive, directive, commissive, expressive, and declarative types. So in my data, I found that directive and expressive functions are being used by CSRs. So these 2 meta categories were added in O'Sullivan ETAL's observation checklist, and the commissive functions were added under the sub functions of the informational function. So the checklist was customized, and 28 different language functions were included in the checklist that I used in my study. So what I found when I applied this checklist on the actual calls, 80 different calls, what I found, there are 2 important findings at stage 1 of my research design. Number 1, taxonomy of TLU tasks. I found 3 different types of tasks that the CSR are supposed to perform while playing the role of a customer service representative over the phone while interacting with the customer. So the first one is direct inquiry. They have to provide, information. They have to provide phone numbers of different departments, different, companies. At the same time, they have to do marketing of different services, hotels, even insurance companies or mobile app, and also assisting customers to locate, a business or a service within an organization. And the second category was service advice, where they have to obtain information from the customer and then log in the query and escalate the query to the right department for further follow-up and provide whatever available information, whatever information is available to the customer and guiding to resolve the issue. And the third category was to handle complaints. The second important finding at stage 1 after applying observation checklist approach was the creation of taxonomy of 28 speech functions, including 5 meta categories, as you see on the slide. When these 28 speech functions were actually applied on 80 calls, 80 real calls from the call center, which included basically 1,800 total data segments. So what I mean by data segments, so basically customer service representatives' turns were considered as the main unit of analysis, and whenever the turn was longer, it was further segmented into smaller units, and each unit was coded. And then as and when the CSR used a different speech function, it was coded. And finally, their frequency was counted. And the result shows that CSRs in the call center TLU domain used managing interaction function the most, like almost 35.70%, followed by interactional functions 27.70%, and informational functions 24%. CSRs also use expressive and directive functions from sales framework, though their percentage is very minimum. It's quite small. Right, so the findings at stage 1 fed into task design at stage 2, phase 2 of the study. So these 3 different tasks from TLU task type, from the taxonomy TLU task, were actually replicated and simulated to design the task for this study. So 3 different tasks were created: task 1, task 2, and task 3. And each task actually different business scenario was incorporated in each task, in actually to cover the maximum business processes within the call center, to cover the business processes operational within the call center context. However, after initial trials, it was found out that it's really difficult for a same CSR job seeker to play 3 different roles, imagining 3 different scenarios. The first one is from airport related scenario, the second one was about postal service scenarios, and the third one fuel station related scenario. So because of initial trials, the last 2 tasks were discarded, and the first task, which was about airport related scenario, was considered and further revised for the final version of the task. At phase 3, different versions of the task were piloted, and the task piloting findings can be categorized again into 3 main areas. The first one is elicitation of speech functions, and the second is minor modifications, the third one is major modifications made in task design. As you can see on the slide, the total 16 people were requested from my institution, different students, including a couple of my colleagues, to try out different versions of these tasks. So these all the 3 tasks actually were piloted 12 times, right? And as you can see in this graph, the first 8 trials, the percentage of different speech functions elicited is quite fluctuating and it's not consistent, which shows that there is a problem that needs to be fixed. And actually the problem was the different roles were played. Some students played the role of a customer, and some students played the role of a CSR over the phone. So they were given detailed, instructions in the form of a card, and then they had to follow those instructions to play the role. But because the customer's role was not scripted, it was left open, and different students and my colleagues played the role of a customer in order to elicit the speech functions, which are required from this test task. So they used their own language ability. They had different personalities, different, educational background. So that actually caused this variation. So in order to control that variation, it was realized that we need to control the input. We need to we need to write the script for the role of the customer. So for that, I prepared the final version of the task. And then, as you can see in the slide, trial number 9, 10, and 11, this was the final version of the task when the customer's role was scripted. And here we can see there is comparatively less variation, and the percentage of elicited speech function is quite consistent, and something which actually I was looking for. In order to explain it further, this slide shows the frequency of occurrence of different speech functions in the first 8 trials when the customer's role was not scripted, as compared to the last 4 trials of the final variant of the task when the customer's role was scripted. So some important functions like negotiating meaning, asking for clarification, indicating uncertainty, or even speculating. Out of the first 8 trials, the percentage, the frequency is quite less than 50%. And in case of speculating, even for the first 8 trials, there was no instance of speculating. So in order to ensure that these functions are elicited, customer's card was further redesigned, and it was ensured that the customer asked questions to the CSR, providing an opportunity to use these speech functions. So finally, we see the frequency in the last 4 trials is quite consistent, and there is a significant improvement in the frequency of occurrence in the last 4 trials. Okay, and this slide actually shows the phase 4 of the research design, how the tasks were revised. So there were minor modifications made, such as card titles were changed. Initially, the card titles were like 1A, 2A, 2B. That was quite confusing. So the title were changed. The customer's card was examiner's card, and the CSR card was titled as CSR candidate card. And the card's length were reduced in order to reduce the reading time. Information was reorganized on the cards, and instructions and language clarified and simplified. And test administration tool also changed at the end. Initially, we used Microsoft Teams and GoToMeeting to play these roles, but finally we had to use Zoom for some technical reasons. Apart from these minor modifications, there were some major modifications made. The first one was the test time reduced. So when the first 3 different versions of the task were piloted, the test time noted was about 28 minutes, which was so impractical. So it had to be reduced, actually. And in order to do that, 2 tasks were discarded, and only 1 task scenario related to the airport services was kept. Similarly, the number of test cards reduced. Initially, 3 cards were prepared for each role: separate instructions card, separate task card, and separate information card for each role. That was again too much for the role players to read and understand and imagine, so they have to be reduced to single 1 card. And in the final task, two call scenario was added in a single card. Call 1 included direct inquiry services and providing different services, and call 2 included handling and registering complaints in order to cover the 3 TLU task types within one test. And finally, the input was controlled and examiner's script or the customer's role was scripted. And finally, this is my last slide. The test was actually used in the real life in order to recruit the real job seekers, in order to recruit CSR candidates within the call center. So their performance on the test task was recorded, and the same CSR candidate's performance on the job interview was also recorded. So currently I'm analyzing the data to see which of these two tasks elicit speech functions which are more representative of the target language used to main task. And that is to answer my research question 2. That is the end of my presentation.